Welcome, everyone, to the Deep Dive. Today, we're embarking on a journey, really, asking a pretty profound question. What if there was a kind of blueprint for navigating life and work?
Right, like a recipe book.
Exactly, a recipe book, not just for success, but for learning from everything, especially those really painful mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine having a guide, almost like a playbook, for, understanding and mastering reality itself.
That's a big promise.
It is, and that's precisely what we're going to plunge into today. We're exploring a truly remarkable collection of insights.
Yeah, we are diving deep into Principles, Life and Work by Ray Dalio. And this isn't, just another business book or some motivational guide. It feels more like a foundational text. It's deeply personal, but also somehow universally applicable. A framework for someone whose life, whose journey is, pretty extraordinary.
It really is.
And it's unique because it basically distills decades of his lived experience, trial, error, into actionable wisdom.
Absolutely. Ray Dalio, the author, he's not your average CEO type. He started, as he puts it, like an ordinary middle-class kid from Long Island.
Right.
Yet through this really systematic approach to learning, to evolving, he built Bridgewater Associates into what Fortune magazine called the 5th most important private company in the U.S.
That's huge.
It is. And Forbes recognized him as one of the 100 richest people, Time magazine, 100 most influential. I mean, that's a serious track record.
Go Kitty.
But it's the how, right? How he got there that makes this book so compelling.
And what's really fascinating, I think, is why he shared these principles. He's at this stage in life where his focus shifted. It wasn't just about his own success anymore.
Helping others.
Exactly. Helping others be successful. He actually put his principles online for free. They got downloaded, over 3 million times.
Wow.
Yeah, and apparently generated this flood of thank you letters, people saying it genuinely impacted their lives, their careers. That really speaks volumes, doesn't it? Yeah. About the value people saw in them.
It does. It cuts across different fields, different life stages, and it wasn't just the general public finding them valuable.
Right. The endorsements are pretty heavyweight.
Yeah. Bill Gates calling the guidance invaluable. Tony Robbins found it truly extraordinary. And Robbins specifically pointed out how Dalio weaves his own history, his painful mistakes, right into the principles themselves.
That's such a key point, that integration, the personal story behind the abstract ideas, it makes it relatable. It makes it resonate.
It really does, because it gets right to the core theme. What are principles? Why do they matter so much?
Dalio defines them as fundamental truths that serve as the foundations for behavior that gets you what you want out of life.
Like recipes for success.
Exactly. Or maybe like a reliable GPS for navigating complex situations. There are strategies that have been tested. They work.
So instead of just reacting, like flailing around every time something new happens.
Treating everything like a unique crisis.
Yeah. Principles give you a framework. They help you classify situations of, this is one of those, again, based on patterns, make better decisions faster. Live a more effective life, really.
It's about leveraging learning, right? From your own experiences, sure, but also from others. Recognizing that most problems you face, someone else has probably faced something similar.
But he throws in a really important warning early on.
Oh yeah, the caveat. You must choose your own principles to match your goals, your nature.
Right. You can't just blindly copy someone else's rules.
No, he says that could be risky. You might end up acting against your own objectives, your own self, if you don't really think it through and make them your own. It's about understanding the why, not just memorizing.
And the way he starts the whole book, it's incredibly humble, almost disarming. He says, I'm a dumb shit who doesn't know much relative to what I need to know.
Yeah, it sets a tone, doesn't it?
It really does. He doesn't credit his success to being smarter or anything. It's about knowing how to deal with his not knowing.
That phrase is key. Knowing how to deal with my not knowing. It immediately tells you that humility, that radical open-mindedness, they aren't just nice ideas.
They're tools, practical tools.
Exactly. Essential for making good decisions, for evolving constantly, whether it's you or your organization. It's about actively looking for what you don't know.
So for this deep dive today, our mission is pretty clear. We want to unpack these principles.
Understand where they came from, in his own life story.
Yeah, how they apply in life, in work, and crucially, how they all connect, how they build on each other.
We're aiming to give you a bit of a shortcut, really. A solid understanding of this whole body of work. We'll look at his journey, the core concepts, practical uses.
And yeah, we'll even touch on some of the criticisms or challenges because, let's be honest, this approach is pretty demanding. It's not easy.
Definitely not.
All right, let's get into it. To really grasp these principles, you have to start at the beginning. Where did they come from? What shaped the person who created them?
We start with part one, where I'm coming from Ray Dalio's Journey to Principles. And he actually encourages us, look past the specific story details and focus on the cause-effect stuff, the logic behind the principles he figured out.
His early life, 1949 to 67, it really sets the stage for his unconventional approach.
Totally. He describes himself as super curious, always wanting to figure things out himself. He admits he had a bad rote memory.
Hated following instructions, hated school's focus on just memorizing facts.
Right, which kind of pushed him towards learning by understanding the why behind things. He had to figure it out from first principles to actually retain it.
And you see that independent streak, that work ethic, forming really young, maybe not keen on chores.
Yeah, he mentions that.
But eager to get jobs outside the house, earn his own money, started at 8, newspaper route, shoveling snow, caddying.
Bussing tables, washing dishes, the whole 9 yards.
And he says those jobs taught him many valuable lessons I wouldn't have learned in school or at play.
A real, practical, results-focused mindset. Cause and effect in the real world right from the start.
His parents were also a big influence. His mother adored him but worried constantly about his bad grades.
And sadly, she passed away when he was only 19. That must have been incredibly formative, dealing with loss, responsibility, so young.
Yeah. And his father, a musician, strong character, independent, even started a second career in his 60s.
You can see how that might foster an appreciation for meaningful work, for relationships, success, beyond just the paycheck.
Okay, now here's where it gets really, really interesting. His formative market experiences, 67 to 79, especially the Nixon shock, August 15th, 1971, that was pivotal.
Absolutely pivotal. Dalio was just a young clerk on the New York Stock Exchange floor. Nixon goes on TV, completely decouples the dollar from gold. What do you expect happens next?
Chaos, right. Market tanks, panic.
That's what Dalio thought too. He expected pandemonium, a massive drop. Instead, the market jumped, went up about 4% that day.
Wow, completely the opposite of what seemed logical.
Totally. And that was a huge jolt for him, a powerful lesson. He realized his failure was because he was surprised by something that hadn't happened in my lifetime, though it had happened many times before.
So the shock wasn't just the market move, it was his own blindness to history, his own limited perspective.
Exactly. He immediately grasped that core principle. You better make sense of what happened to other people in other times and other places.
So what did he do? Just realize it?
No, he acted on it. He spent the rest of that summer digging into history, studying past currency devaluations, financial crises, trying to find those underlying patterns, those cause-effect links.
That's foundational Dalio, isn't it? History isn't just dusty books. It's a data set of repeatable patterns if you look hard enough.
It's the ultimate shortcut, really. Learn from others' mistakes, not just your own. Accelerate your progress.
And then came the famous pork belly debacle.
Oh, yeah. Another painful one. A big losing trade for him. The market for pork bellies went limit down day after day. Price falls so low, trading just stops.
He called it a very tactile experience of financial pain, like an electric shock.
And that shock, that pain, taught him another critical lesson. The importance of risk controls.
You have to make sure no single bet can wipe you out.
Precisely. Ensuring no single bet, or even multiple bets, could cause me to lose more than an acceptable amount. This really highlights his deep fear of being wrong, but he channeled that fear productively.
Into building resilience, defensive strategies.
Exactly. Meticulous defense. It's a classic example of how real, significant pain can forge principles that last.
It's fascinating how these early hits shaped him. So then he starts Bridgewater from his 2-bedroom apartment.
Right, with a rugby buddy and an assistant. And his motivation wasn't purely money, even then.
He said pursuing the mission, helping clients beat the markets with friends, was much more fun than having a real job.
Yeah, and that's where he started redefining success for himself. He realized pretty quickly making money was good, but having meaningful work and meaningful relationships was far better.
Money's value is just what it buys, right?
Exactly. It has no intrinsic value. And he says it's not the only one, and certainly not the most important one, once you get past having the amount you need. That belief really underpins his whole philosophy. Purpose and relationships over just piling up cash.
That's a powerful realization, especially early in a finance career. He also got really into studying concrete markets like livestock, grain.
Yeah, where he could literally visualize the processes, the cause-effect links. It wasn't just intellectual curiosity.
It was about building systems.
Yes. From those observations, he started creating decision rules, principles that he could then embed into our computers. This was the birth of systemized decision-making at Bridgewater.
He saw early on how computers could process more data faster, unemotionally, leading to better outcomes than just human gut feeling.
Which, as we know, can be swayed by bias and emotion.
Okay, so now we hit Dalio's My Abyss, 1979 to 1982. This was the ultimate humbling. Nearly cost him everything.
Yeah, the big one. In 81, he goes public, predicting a massive depression, maybe worse than the 1930s, citing huge debt, soaring inflation.
And he was wrong. Very publicly wrong.
Painfully wrong. He calls it incredibly humbling and admits it cost me just about everything I built, his self-description. An arrogant jerk who is totally confident in a totally incorrect view.
Wow. Brutal honesty.
And the consequences were real. Bridgewater crashed, went from several employees down to just him, had to borrow $4,000 from his dad.
Just to keep going.
It was a huge turning point, a fork in the road, as he calls it. A moment of deep reckoning.
So what was the deep lesson there, beyond just don't be arrogant? How did he come back from that?
He realized something crucial about success. Successful people change in ways that allow them to continue to take advantage of their strengths while compensating for their weaknesses, and unsuccessful people don't.
So the failure itself wasn't the point, it was the response to failure.
Exactly. He saw the pain as a signal, a prompt to really look hard at his weaknesses, embrace them, learn from them. It becomes a core principle. Embrace pain, reflect, let it drive your evolution. Obstacles aren't failures, they're feedback.
And this is also where he confronted the paradox of risk.
Right. Before, he thought it was simple. High risk, high reward. Or low risk, low reward. Pick one.
But the failure forced him to ask, could you have both low risk and high returns?
Yes, which seemed impossible. But it forced him to go slowly when faced with a choice between two things that you need that are seemingly at odds, and that led to the insight. There is almost always a good path that you just haven't discovered yet.
Don't accept the false choice, assume there's a better way, and find it.
Exactly. Instead of settling for either, assume there's an and dig until you find it. That humbling experience fundamentally changed his approach, made him radically open-minded, relentlessly systematic.
So coming out of that abyss, he starts his road of trials,
Right.
rebuilding Bridgewater, refining things from 83 to 94.
He changes his investment strategy, moved away from those big all-or-nothing bets.
To something more nuanced, based on confidence.
Yeah, a variable system. And this led to the idea of alpha overlay, separating passive market returns beta from the active returns generated by unique insights, alpha.
Like beta is just being in the game, alpha is how you win?
Kind of. The principle became only take bets you are highly confident in and to diversify them well. It allowed much more sophisticated risk control.
And his curiosity didn't stop at markets. He went to China in 84. That was bold back then.
Really bold. China was very much a closed door to the West. He built relationships, even started a company there, Bridgewater China Partners.
I thought that company eventually closed.
It did. The complexity, the demands of the main business, it was too much. But it taught him another profound lesson. Maturity is the ability to reject good alternatives in order to pursue even better ones.
Focus. You can't do everything, even if it's appealing.
Exactly. He realized if you work hard and creatively, you can have just about anything you want, but not everything you want.
Yeah.
Understanding those necessary trade-offs, focusing energy, that's crucial.
And that China experience had a personal impact, too, through his son, Matt.
Right. Matt started the China Care Charity for special needs orphans after his time there. And Dalio says this taught him about the joys of philanthropy, the deep pleasures of great personal relationships. Broadened his definition of wealth again.
This period is also where the seeds of radical transparency were sown.
Organically, yeah. Early Bridgewater was small, like a community of friends. Dalio spoke frankly, expected the same back, even using words like stupid.
Not exactly standard corporate communications.
Well, definitely not. He said he never valued more traditional antiseptic relationships where people put on a facade of politeness. That raw honesty, however messy, became the foundation for radical truth.
And that frankness led to an early version of the idea meritocracy.
Pretty much, bringing opposing views out in the open, really exploring them, based on the belief that the power of a group is so much greater than the power of an individual, especially a group that disagrees thoughtfully.
So thoughtful disagreement wasn't just tolerated, it was encouraged, actively sought out.
Yes. The goal wasn't for Dalio to be right. It was to create a system to find the best answers, whoever they came from. Subordinating ego to the pursuit of truth. That became central to Bridgewater's DNA.
Okay, that brings us to The Ultimate Boon and Returning the Boon from 95 to 2015. This is where things really got formalized and scaled up. A key discovery: risk parity.
Yes, mid-90s. He was trying to build a portfolio for his family trust that would do well in any economic weather, survive any storm.
And that led to the principle.
Making a handful of good, uncorrelated bets that are balanced and leveraged well is the surest way of having a lot of upside without being exposed to unacceptable downside.
So diversification, but smarter, balancing risks, not just assets.
Exactly. And he realized this wasn't just for investing. It's a universal principle, like building a team where different players excel in different conditions so the team wins overall.
As Bridgewater grew like crazy, managers started asking him, how do we do this? How do we operate like this?
That demand led him to formalize things. In 2006, he put together a rough list of about 60 work principles, which then evolved into this detailed decision-making library, codifying the Bridgewater way.
But there was another critical turning point around people, right? The intractable people problem in 93.
Oh yeah, huge. He got this brutally honest memo from his team, basically saying his style was hurting morale.
That must have been tough to hear.
For sure. But instead of getting defensive, it prompted him to dive deep into neuroscience, psychology, trying to understand why people reacted the way they did.
And that led to his concept of the 2 U's.
Yes. The upper-level logical brain, the prefrontal cortex, versus the lower-level emotional subconscious part, the amygdala, basal ganglia. He realized the conflict between these two was the biggest reason for the problems.
That explains so much, right? Why we react emotionally, even when we logically know better.
Totally. And understanding this pushed him towards psychometric testing, like Myers-Briggs, starting around 2006, to get objective data on how people are wired, their preferences, their thinking styles.
Not just what they say, but who they fundamentally are.
Right. And that data fed into the baseball cards.
Documenting people's stats, strengths, weaknesses.
Making it all clearer and more explicit to match people to jobs objectively. His analogy: just as you wouldn't have a great fielder with a .160 batting average bat third, you wouldn't assign a big picture person a task requiring attention to details.
Right.
Evidence-based talent management.
And these systems, these principles, they faced the ultimate test with the 2008 financial crisis. He saw it coming.
He did. His mind flashed back to his 79-82 disaster. But this time, he said he was much less sure I was right. That humility again.
So he didn't just trust his gut.
No, it drove him to research past debt crises like crazy. Rigorous analysis, not just intuition.
And he interacted with policymakers during that time. Summers, Schäuble.
Yeah, and he noticed big differences. Investors anticipate, stake their own money. Policymakers often seek consensus, react, negotiate. He tried to approach them like a doctor, offering diagnosis based on economic mechanics, not politics.
And his advice actually mattered.
Apparently so. Larry Summers said Dalio's guidance was most important in shaping this market. He even predicted quantitative easing in Europe when many thought it impossible, just based on how the economic machine had to work. Shows the power of principle-based understanding.
Wow. Okay, finally, the returning the boon phase. Inspired by Joseph Campbell.
Yeah, his son Paul introduced him to the hero with 1,000 faces. And Campbell's idea of the hero giving his life to something bigger than himself really resonated.
Crystallized his own journey, his purpose.
Exactly. He realized his ultimate purpose wasn't just building Bridgewater, but passing on the principles he'd learned and his wealth to help others.
Which connects directly to his philanthropy.
Through the family foundation, Matt's charity, he learned how to give effectively. And he realized money goes fast, even for the super rich, which led him to commit to giving away more than half his wealth.
That whole arc, from trying to figure out markets to building the success machine to then wanting to share the blueprint and the rewards, that's the backbone of the book.
It really is.
Yeah.
A testament to continuous learning, evolving purpose, and contribution.
Okay, so we've walked through Dalio's journey, seen how his experiences shaped his thinking. Now let's shift to part 2, life principles. The overarching approach to everything. This is where he pulls out the universal lessons.
Right. And at the core is this idea of principles as reflection on reality. He truly believes everything that happens comes about because of cause-effect relationships that repeat and evolve over time.
Everything's a machine. Life, economies, even our minds.
In a way, yes. Made of interconnected machines, it's not cold or deterministic. It's a way to systematically understand how things actually work.
And he suggests most situations we face, they aren't totally unique. They fall into categories.
A few hundred categories, he estimates. So having principles for these allows better, faster decisions. You classify it, it's one of those. Then apply the relevant principle, the best recipe you have for that situation.
It's very systematic, which leads right into that foundational principle. Embrace reality and deal with it.
Yeah, and this isn't passive acceptance. It's active confrontation with what's true. And he argues that radical open-mindedness and radical transparency are invaluable for rapid learning and effective change.
Okay, why invaluable? Especially when they can feel so uncomfortable.
Because learning is a feedback loop, right? Open-mindedness makes the loop work better. It makes what you're doing and why clear, cuts down on self-deception, invites honest feedback.
And transparency builds trust.
Leads to more meaningful work and more meaningful relationships, he argues. Because trust is built on truth, even when it's hard.
But it is hard. He acknowledges that, right? It takes time to adapt.
Oh, yeah. He says about 18 months to really get used to radical truth and transparency. Because that lower-level emotional brain part just resists it, sees it as an attack.
It's a sustained period of discomfort before you see the benefits.
Exactly. And many people just can't push through that, which is why the Bridgewater culture is so distinct.
He compares hiding the truth to letting kids believe in Santa. Feels nice short-term, but hurts trust and learning long-term.
You have nothing to fear from knowing the truth. He tells that story about his health scare, doctors disagreeing.
Right, and on the phone together, they downplayed their disagreement. Professional courtesy over finding the best answer.
Yeah, which showed him how vital it is to triangulate views, get multiple believable perspectives to find the real truth, even if it creates friction.
Building on that, he says, look to nature to learn how reality works.
We didn't invent nature's laws, right? But our progress flight, cell phones, comes from understanding and applying them. We succeed by working with reality.
And a key law he sees in nature, evolve or die.
Applies to everything. Products, companies, people. It's about constant adaptation, constantly improving. If you're not getting better, you're effectively getting worse relative to a changing world.
He also talks about reality optimizing for the whole, not the individual part.
Yeah, like individual incentives, say pleasure from sex, ultimately serve the whole system, like DNA's evolution. It encourages a broader perspective, beyond just our immediate wants.
And nature adapts through rapid trial and error, like natural selection.
Things improve without a conscious designer, just by favoring what works. He compares viruses to brilliant chess opponents that evolve incredibly fast. It underscores the power of experimenting, iterating, learning from feedback.
But unlike viruses, humans can direct their own evolution consciously.
Right, through learning and reflection.
Yeah.
Which makes our evolution potentially much faster. And this leads to his famous formula.
Pain plus reflection, progress.
The no pain, no gain idea, but systemized. Pain isn't just bad. It's a signal that you need to find solutions so you can progress. It's the catalyst for rapid learning evolving.
So embrace the pain. Don't shy away from it.
He challenges us to. If you don't let up on yourself and instead become comfortable always operating with some level of pain, you will evolve at a faster pace. It's the choice between the healthy and painful truth and the unhealthy but comfortable delusion. Hard, because our brains hate discomfort, but essential for growth.
So practically, how do you apply all this? He gives us the 5-step process to get what you want out of life.
It's an iterative cycle. Goals, design your machine. Plan, people, systems, get outcomes. Use outcomes to modify the machine. Better achieve goals. It's a loop.
Step 1, have clear goals and prioritize. You can have virtually anything you want. You can't have everything you want.
Don't confuse goals with just desires or the flashy trappings of success. And don't dismiss big goals just because they seem impossible now. Great expectations create great capabilities. Aim high.
Step 2, identify and don't tolerate problems. See problems as potential improvements screaming at you.
Be specific. Don't mistake symptoms for the actual problem. And don't avoid them just because they involve harsh realities. Ignoring smoke means the fire wins.
Step 3, diagnose problems to get at their root causes. Keep asking why.
Drill down. Bad programming. Why? Harry did it badly. Why? Not trained. Rushed. Why? Management issues. Find the fundamental cause. Is it a person's capability or a flaw in the system design?
Step 4. Design improvements to your machine. Build specific plans to fix the root cause.
He says designing a good plan doesn't take long, but needs careful thought. Use data, maybe tools like an issue log. Design solutions, don't just patch things.
And step 5. Push through to completion. Execution is everything.
Great planners who don't execute their plans go nowhere. Emphasize good habits, clear metrics, accountability. A brilliant plan means nothing without follow-through.
One of the hardest parts, he says, is managing the designer versus worker self.
Yeah, being able to objectively look down on yourself and your situation like you're designing and managing a machine. Most people get stuck in the machine just doing the work.
Success requires being the designer manager, objectively assessing the worker you, even firing yourself from a task if you're not the best person for it.
Exactly. Finding someone else, outsourcing, whatever gets the best result for the machine overall.
Which leads to weaknesses don't matter if you find solutions.
You probably can't do all 5 steps perfectly yourself. We all have different strengths. Success comes from having the strengths or getting them from others through humility and collaboration.
Takes the pressure off needing to be perfect at everything.
Totally. Which connects right to the next principle. Understand your own and others' mental maps and humility.
He thinks most bad decisions happen because people are too certain they're right. They block out better alternatives.
Our internal biases, our mental maps, can be huge blinders. Radically open-minded people know that asking the right questions, consulting other smart people, is as crucial as having answers yourself. It's about finding the best answer, not your answer.
Hence, don't worry about looking good.
Yeah, people try to prove they have the answers, even when they don't. It's counterproductive, he insists. Accurate criticism is the most valuable feedback you can receive. It's a gift. Helps you evolve.
He gives us signs of closed-mindedness to watch for, focusing on being understood over understanding, saying, I could be wrong, but not meaning it, making statements, not questions.
Complaining about style over substance. Lack of deep humility. If you see these in yourself, it's a red flag. Pause. Reflect.
So how do you become radically open-minded?
Yeah.
Overcome those defenses?
Use pain as your guide for reflection. Make open-mindedness a habit. Actively find your blind spots by reviewing mistakes, asking others for honest feedback about your weaknesses. Consistent bad decisions in one area. That's probably a blind spot.
And this all relies on understanding that people are wired very differently.
Brains are innately different, he says. Like physical attributes. Some are big picture thinkers, some detail-oriented, some creative, some analytical. It's just how we're built.
He brings up the 2 U's again here. Conscious versus subconscious.
Higher level rational brain versus lower level emotional habitual brain. The amygdala causes those amygdala hijackings, the fight or flight reactions. The basal ganglia drives habits.
And consciously choosing your habits is key.
Extraordinarily impactful, he says, because habits, good or bad, run so much of our lives automatically.
He also touches on right brain differences, logical versus creative.
But with practical application, left brain. Sequential, details, analysis, like legal docs, right brain. Emotional, themes, big picture, synthesis, like creative work, both vital. Understanding helps assign tasks effectively. Don't put your big picture visionary on the detailed audit.
He even talks about archetypes, recognizable combinations of traits, artist, perfectionist, crusher, shaper.
Yeah, and knowing your own wiring and others is crucial. Happiness, he argues, comes from aligning your life and work with your true nature, finding where you naturally fit and thrive.
So these life principles create this integrated framework, understanding yourself, reality, approaching problems systematically, learning from pain, building this evolving machine of progress.
Exactly, both for yourself and for working effectively with others.
Okay, let's transition now. From those universal life principles to part 3, work principles, applying principles to an organization. This is where radical personal evolution becomes a collective approach. The Bridgewater culture.
And right at the heart of it is the idea of meritocracy, radical truth and radical transparency in action.
The core principles sound simple, but executing them, that's the hard part.
Definitely. Put honest thoughts out there, have thoughtful disagreements, and crucially, abide by believability-weighted decision-making.
It's often called the opposite of a cult, which is provocative.
It is.
Yeah.
Because a cult demands blind obedience, uniformity. Dalio's system demands independent thought, rigorous challenge.
But how does that work day to day without just being chaotic or abrasive?
It requires that combination of independent thinking and deep humility. It works because it forces important issues out into the open. It enforces disciplined thinking. You have to back up your logic. And it maintains high standards.
But it's not for everyone, right? That 18-month adjustment period.
Yeah, that emotional brain part resists the criticism. Some people just never adapt. They prefer comfort over the pain of being challenged and evolving. It takes a specific kind of person who really values learning over ego.
I get the intellectual appeal, but the emotional side. Constant challenge, radical transparency. It sounds incredibly tough. People criticize it as too harsh, even dehumanizing sometimes.
Dalio argues people eventually see that knowing mistakes is the first step to learning. That feedback, like you handled that badly, is meant to help, not punish. It's truth over temporary niceness. He believed the long-term trust and better outcomes outweigh the short-term discomfort. But yeah, it requires someone who prioritizes that rapid learning.
Moving on, he makes this really strong statement. Getting the people right. The WHO is more important than the what?
Unequivocal.
Yeah.
Nothing is more important or more difficult than to get the culture and people right.
And great people need both great character plus great capabilities.
Character means radical truthfulness, transparency, commitment to the mission, excellence. Capabilities are the actual skills for the role. Lacking either one is dangerous. Great skills, but bad character. Destructive. Great character, but can't do the job. Also a problem.
So hiring is absolutely critical. Penalties for hiring wrong are huge.
Don't hire on gut feel, or just because someone succeeded somewhere else. Focus on character first, then capabilities for the specific role. His line is great. Bet on changes you have seen than those you hope for. Hire who they are.
He sees teams like sports. Different skills for different positions. Excellence is required everywhere.
And pay north of fair to foster commitment. Focus on making the pie bigger together, not fighting over slices.
And it's not just hiring. You have to constantly train, test, evaluate, and sort people.
Continuous evolution for individuals and the organization. Personal evolution leads to exponential returns, he believes.
Requires frank assessment. Honest feedback on strengths, weaknesses.
Yes. Whether it leads to training or moving someone to a different role. Tough love is both the hardest and the most important type of love to give. And focus on accuracy over implications. State what's true about performance. Don't sugarcoat to avoid discomfort.
And a hard line. Don't lower the bar. If someone can't meet the standards with radical truth and transparency, they must leave.
But love the people you shoot. Handle departures with consideration. His example with Ross, who made a big mistake. He didn't fire him.
Right, they built an error log system instead, helped him learn, turned the mistake into a systemic improvement.
Exactly. High standards, but principle-based consequences focused on learning, not punishment.
That's powerful. Next up, managing as someone operating a machine to achieve a goal.
Taking that high-level perspective, looking down on your machine and yourself within it, objectively.
Constantly compare outcomes to goals, evaluate the machine people, and design to diagnose problems. Is it a design flaw? A people issue?
And perceive and don't tolerate problems. Problems are coal thrown into a locomotive engine, fuel for progress. Don't ignore them for a pat on the back.
Beware the frog in the boiling water syndrome, getting used to unacceptable things.
And beware groupthink. Just because nobody's worrying doesn't mean nothing's wrong. Silence can be a huge red flag.
When designing improvements, he wants to systemize principles into algorithms.
He really believes technology can radically improve the quality of management, faster, more consistent, less emotional decisions, augmenting human judgment.
Organizational design matters too. Self-sufficient departments, avoid bloat, use consultants sparingly, avoid consultant addiction.
And implement controls against dishonesty. Stark truth. A higher percentage of the population will cheat if given the opportunity.
So, public hangings, transparent consequences for breaking rules.
To deter bad behavior, reinforce shared values. It's about collective learning from mistakes, maintaining accountability in the meritocracy.
Need clear reporting lines. Avoid dual reporting unless it's carefully managed. And emphasize leverage.
Achieving more with less. He aims for 50.1 leverage. Find leveragers who can turn concepts into reality, magnifying impact.
He also redefines leadership. It's not about being the strong boss giving orders.
No, it's about open-mindedly seeking the best answers and bringing others along as part of that discovery process. Appealing to reason, not base emotions. Leading by example in the meritocracy.
And accountability. Hold yourself and others accountable. Distinguish between breaking a defined contract and an unclear expectation. And managers shouldn't get sucked down doing their subordinates' work. That signals a deeper problem.
Right, either in the design or the person below.
The systemization even extends to using tools and protocols to shape how work is done, because words alone aren't enough.
Behavioral change needs internalized or habituated learning. Tools help make principles practical, almost like a GPS for decision-making.
He outlines some key Bridgewater tools. The Coach app.
Yeah, links common situations, ones of those, to relevant principles, gives context-specific advice, learns from feedback, like an AI mentor.
The Dot Collector, used in meetings.
For real-time feedback, dots on contributions, thinking styles, highlights tough questions, enables believability-weighted voting. It shifts focus from ego and opinion to evidence-based assessment, crucial for the idea of meritocracy.
Baseball cards or people profiles, compiling objective stats on people.
Qualities, strengths, weaknesses based on data and observation. Helps match people to roles objectively, minimizing bias, evidence-based talent management again.
Then there are process maps for workflows, policy and procedures manuals to codify learning, and metrics.
You can't manage what you can't measure. Need data to track the machine's performance.
Finally, governance, the oversight layer. Dalio admits he underestimated this initially.
It ensures the company sticks to its principles, especially during transitions. Protects the idea of meritocracy. It defines circles of authority, trust, and access to information. Ensures accountability at the highest level.
He talks about chairmen, boards, assessing capabilities and adherence to principles, not micromanaging.
It's designed to ensure the whole system survives long-term, prevents it from sliding back into more conventional, less effective ways.
Okay, so we've covered a lot. Dalio's journey, the life principles, the work principles. What does this all mean for you listening right now? How do we synthesize this?
It really brings Dalio's core idea full circle. His whole life demonstrates that success isn't about being perfect or knowing everything. It's about having a system for learning from reality, adapting relentlessly, building effective systems.
And that core message, meaningful work and meaningful relationships are the goals.
And radical truth and radical transparency are the ways of achieving them. It's holistic. Purpose and connection are the real wealth, beyond just money, once your needs are met.
The power of that idea, meritocracy, where thoughtful disagreement and believability weighting lead to better outcomes. It makes the group so much stronger than individuals alone.
It's a system designed to find truth and drive excellence.
So for you, the listener, what are the key takeaways? First, think for yourself, but always with humility, with radical open-mindedness.
Second, see your pain, your problems, as signals for growth. Remember, pain plus reflection, progress. Actively confront discomfort.
Third, use that 5-step process: goals, problems, diagnosis, design, completion. See your own life, your work, as a machine you can design and improve.
Fourth, really try to understand your own wiring and how others are wired differently. That's fundamental for building good teams, good relationships, leveraging strengths.
Fifth, try embracing radical truth and transparency, even when it's hard. It's the fastest path to real learning and trust, despite the initial discomfort.
And finally, view your life and work as that constantly evolving machine. Always be designing, managing, refining.
The real value here isn't just hitting conventional success goals, is it?
No. Dalio emphasizes the satisfaction comes from the struggle well, from the continuous evolution. Being strong is better than being weak, and that struggling gives one strength. Fulfillment is in that process of confronting reality and growing.
So as you continue your own deep dive, here's a final thought to consider. If you could objectively identify your single biggest weakness, your most significant blind spot, and then design a tool or a principle to systematically overcome it, what would that be?
And maybe more importantly, how willing are you to embrace the uncomfortable truth of that weakness, the pain of confronting it, in order to achieve that radical progress? That's the journey Dalio maps out, a challenging one, but one aimed at building a life of real principle and purpose.